All right, welcome to another episode of Sounds Like an HR Problem. This is Yang here with Ashley,
Hi
and
guys.
we're here to do another episode. Today's topic is going to be about personal beliefs, right? So we wanted to talk about how if when you have personal beliefs in the workplace, it does cause other issues. There's other sensitivity that goes around. So you want to go ahead and start with the first story today, Ashley?
Sure. So, uh, we had a situation. I mean, obviously, and it's kind of pertinent to like the current climate, right? Where there's a lot, some political divide, if you will, in our country. This kind of goes all the way back to this was the 2016, yes, election, right? So that would have been the Trump and Hillary election time, right? So the first time around. And so, there it was still pretty divided back then. I mean, people were very like one way or the other, like, very, liberal or conservative or whatever. And so I actually had an employee that working in the HR department that was pretty vocal about her beliefs, but also was hanging like things in her like cubicle that was kind of like resist posters and things like that. And again, I don't really have any opinion one way or the other about somebody's political beliefs, especially being in HR, right? Like I remain unbiased in that. It was
Hmm.
just more about the company itself, the owners and the executive management team were leaned a little bit more on the conservative side. Not to say that she should change her personal beliefs and align to theirs just because she works there, but, it was starting to come to my attention that, like, the posters and the things she was hanging in her cubicle were, like, just a little bit, too vocal. So I had to have that conversation basically just to say, "Look, everyone's entitled to their beliefs and, whatever you want to speak about outside these 4 walls in terms of on your social media, if you want to go to a march downtown or whatever, however you want to vote, like that's all, your prerogative. But, and you can even, say, hey, I'm this way, right? Like you can, no one's asking you to deny what you are, right? But you just in a workplace, in a professional setting, you just have to be careful of the perception of pushing those beliefs onto other people, right? So, like, it's one thing to say, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, right? But it's a whole nother thing to say, well, because I'm one of those things, your beliefs are wrong.
Yeah, or just saying that, "Oh, you guys are so stupid," or,
Right. Or getting
you
into
know
arguments in a
yeah.
work, about like those beliefs. And especially being in HR, right? Because we are supposed to be neutral and we're supposed to remain unbiased.
Hold on, that person was in HR?
Yes. Yeah. It was an HR employee. And so I just had to give that, like, gentle reminder of, like, one, just in general, the workplace, right? Like, no matter what your position in the company is, but then also because you're HR, we have to be even more neutral.
Well, you should know better, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So, I had a whole conversation with my daughter yesterday 'cause, so my son's special needs, right? And then we were talking about, like, how special needs kids, they just need more attention just because of the nature of parenting a special needs child, right?
Right.
And, my daughter's young, she doesn't so with her, she's just more jealous that he gets more attention than she does, right?
Yeah.
So then, she'll throw
I
in a
mean,
fit.
my kids are like that, and they're not even don't even have that
Yeah, 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 yeah. So
jealousy.
she's just being a normal kid,
Right.
right? But at the same time, I was just like she said something to the nature of like, "I get it, dad, they're special and I'm not," or something, you know what I mean, right? And then I had to like stop her. I was like, time out. Like, you of all people should know better than to say stuff like that, right? Like you've been, like you're old enough now
In this
to
environment. Yeah.
understand that, you should know better, right? So then sorry, that is it's kind of a tangent, but like, yeah, being in HR, you should know better than to, you know, hang your whole political beliefs out in the open and like put it in people's faces and make people feel uncomfortable and,
Right.
whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and but then also the other thing is at this company and for a lot of companies too, we didn't really have anything in our handbook or there wasn't really even a policy around like so for instance, like I think everybody knows you can't discriminate for certain beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Culture, religion, it's all in the Title VII language, right? Like all
Mhm.
that stuff is very like clear to most employers. But that's about, like, not discriminating, but what's the reverse side of that when somebody is being, like, overtly in your face about those beliefs, and it's to the point that people are uncomfortable, right? But there's usually not a policy around that.
Mm.
People
Why
just kinda
not?
or until there's a and there is once you write one when something I mean, think about a lot of policies. People write them once something happens,
That's
right?
true.
As a reaction to a situation. But sometimes they just aren't proactively putting that out there. And so I think this is just to say that you probably should, when you're considering your handbook and policy manuals and stuff, like it doesn't hurt to have a section in there about like political beliefs, you know?
So what ended up happening with the person?
They took down the posters and they did tone down the like talk in the office a little bit. But
Mm.
I remember election day, they came in and basically were like, I voted for X and I'm proud of that decision. And I was like, that's fine. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Well,
you
it's
can
good for
say,
you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you can vote for whoever you want, but yeah,
right.
for me personally, like I try never to talk about that stuff in the workplace, you
Me
know?
either.
I'll talk about it at home with friends, whatever, right? But in the workplace, I try to stay as neutral as possible.
Well,
I didn't
because I
even
think sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I
yeah, yeah,
think that there's misperceptions about, and this could be religion, could be political beliefs, whatever,
yeah,
is that if you say you are a thing, there's so many perceptions associated with that thing, even if you aren't that perception.
yep,
You don't 100% align with those things. Now you've just created some kind of like, what if your manager, I mean, this is just a good example. Right? What if your manager is like diehard liberal Democrat and you are now, you've never had that conversation and now you've said, well, I'm a Republican. Is that manager going to somehow now even unknowingly treat you different because
yeah,
they know that about you and they don't
yeah, like
align
a
with it?
subconscious bias or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. We could do a whole nother episode just on bias in the
Well, yeah,
workplace.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Cause that happens, when you're screening resumes,
Yeah.
right? And you see a certain ethnic name,
Yeah.
you have certain associations to it, right?
Yeah.
Um, like me being Asian, when I see an Asian name on a resume and I'm screening it, I automatically think, "Oh, they're smart."
Yeah.
Like, you know?
No, the ones that but okay, this has nothing to do with like ethnicity,
Yeah.
but the ones that got me, and you know this from like staffing, are like the ones that are ridiculous email addresses where you're like, girl, if you're looking for a job, you should definitely change that email address. Like
Yeah.
sex bunny 20s, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
you
from when
should
they were, like,
change that
16 or
email.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no.
That's funny. Yeah. Well,
Or the
for the
ringback tones. Do you remember the ringback tones when those were a thing?
what?
When people used to have ringback tones on their
You talking about,
voicemail.
like, the
Like when you would call someone, right?
on their
And it's
voicemail.
and yes, and it would have a song. Do you remember this from staffing?
The funniest was,
And you'd be
like
like waiting to leave them a message and you would be listening to their song and I would be
yeah,
like, "Ooh, that's an interesting song." Like, I don't know if
yeah,
I'm gonna call that person back, like, you
yeah,
know?
that's funny. I forgot about that. Yeah, alright,
Anyway,
yes, so what ended up happening at the end, just so that was the conclusion, and then she just kinda
I
toned it
mean,
down?
I think having the conversation helped,
Yeah,
but I think
yeah.
how many managers, owners, people are, like, too afraid to, like, have those conversations
Confront it. Yeah,
because they think, "Well, am I then policing their, like, beliefs? Am
that's
I, like,
true.
telling them what to do in their personal life?" So, you gotta nuance and again, that's why me being in HR, it was not that difficult for me to have that conversation, but I would
Mhm.
say if it was somebody not in HR or owner or manager, like, you go and get some consult.
Coaching. Yeah, yes, just some coaching before you
Yeah,
have that call. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
before you have that conversation with your employee. Um but it's not just political beliefs. Like, I think you talked
Yeah.
about a religious
Religious.
one, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we had, placed a candidate at a company, and her situation was unique because she wasn't like in a cubicle, like in the back or anything. She was the front desk person, right?
Right.
So she had her desk at the front, and she decorated it all like super Christian, which is fine. And majority of the people in this country are
Again, not
Christian.
judging. Yeah.
Exactly. But it was just so,
In
like,
your face.
over the top. Yeah, that because the company is, I forgot what type of company it was, but they're very neutral. They wanted to stay neutral, right? So then same thing, like, they didn't wanna offend any potential clients that came in that were not Christian or whatever, right? So
Right.
they asked her to, same thing, kinda tone it down, and then but she took offense to it. She's like, "Oh my
Went the
god."
opposite direction.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So she was very defensive. She was very, just more like your, the freedom of religion, all that kind of stuff, right? So then that ended up just kind of making it worse. And then she became more not about the religious stuff, but about her attitude and like how her demeanor and all that kind of
Everything
stuff.
just shifted after that.
Yeah. And it just kind of snowballed in the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
So then eventually I ended up having to let her go. And then because we were the employer, right? She ended up filing a complaint against me.
I was
And
about
I'm
to
like,
say, did she file some kind of complaint saying she was being discriminated because of her religion?
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
by
that's where
by
that leads
by
generally.
us, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't even like I was just doing, what because the client, you made the client feel uncomfortable, right? So then I'm just the messenger.
Right. Right.
But then now because we were the employer and I'm the one that gave her that feedback, right? And I forgot exactly what I said, but I try to keep it as like neutral as possible. And it was just more about her focusing more on like
You
her
try to make
attitude.
it about the behavior after, not the, like, initial religion issue.
Yeah, exactly. But all in all, she didn't like it. So then I had to do a whole thing, and then it had turned into a whole investigation and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
then it came out like, nothing was there. But that was a learning lesson for me. You have to be very careful in how you deliver the news. Things can get misconstrued. They can use it against you in some way, things like that, right? So once again, that comes back to getting the proper coaching before you have these
Yeah.
conversations, right? Making sure
Absolutely.
you're covering all your bases, making sure you're delivering the message with the right tone, along with the right message and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then sometimes even if you do all that and do it well, they're still gonna be angry and they'll still do something. But
Yeah.
so then it
It's
comes
all
back to the
situational. It's all based on the person.
well, and but then it comes back to having the right policy in place and then,
Mhm.
to cover your butt really and just making sure,
Right.
hey, it's all in there. We did our due diligence, we did it properly. So even if they do come after you, you can still stay covered.
Yeah, documentation's important, things being transparent is important, and then also, I mean, not to say anything about you as the recruiter, but this is just a generalization of recruiting, right? In that interview process, not that, because those you can't ask those questions, right? 101, recruiting 101, hiring 101. You can't ask questions about, like, people's personal life. But if something, there are cues there sometimes in interviews to see, like, what kind of person, like, how overtly religious is somebody. It'll come out sometime. Like, you and I saw this a lot. Did you ever the God bless,
Yeah.
right? People
Yeah,
would
yeah,
say,
yeah.
like, on the phone with you, or their voicemail would say it.
Oh, yeah.
And not to create bias, but every time I heard it, I was like, "Uh-oh." Like, not, "Uh-oh," that they're religious, but just, is this person going to fit with this client if the client is not overtly religious or whatever, you know what I
Am
mean?
I am I hiring a crusader?
Right. I mean, you just like, but what's also like, there's a hard job for a recruiter
Yeah, yeah.
too, to, like,
No, but
see and
I've come
hear things in
across
an interview and
yeah, and
know,
then
is
and
that
it's
a
hard
red.
to tell because I've come across a lot of good candidates that, they have that God bless and whatever, which is fine, but they're great. Professional.
Yeah, no, they'll
Yeah,
bring it into the workplace. Yeah.
exactly. So it's just the person, the nuance of it, right?
Yeah.
And then so that kind of segues to another question that I have for you is what if a company is well, obviously for publicly traded companies, you have to kind of like stay neutral, right? But what if you're a privately owned company and like Christian Brothers, for example, right? And it's part of your
Culture.
policy. Yeah, part of your
Yeah.
culture, part of your thing. Like, could you screen for that? Or um do you want to is that against the law to try to screen for that, right?
I mean, the term screen, right? Like you still have to shy away from certain questions like in the interview about religion. I think it's more about educating the candidate. You want to educate them on the environment of the company and the culture of the company and some of their practices. And then if the candidate's not comfortable, then they'll either opt themselves out or you've set the expectation. So they can't go in and then be like surprised by the like, I didn't know this was a Christian company. I didn't know that they prayed at lunch or whatever it is,
Mhm.
because you already set that all up for them in the interview
Yeah.
process, right?
So you can't not hire, or you can't like screen because they're not Christian, for example.
Right.
But as long as you let them know and make sure well, obviously number one, qualified for the job, and then number two, comfortable with the environment, right?
Right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it. You're just putting the facts out there. It's not anything that you wouldn't tell every single candidate coming in the door. You're
Yeah.
like the culture and the environment. And then if they choose to step through the door and accept that, and then it becomes an issue later on, well, then we can say, well, we told you all this during the interview, and now all of a sudden it's an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So for our listeners out there, what's the key lessons from this?
So I would say, you know, consult with somebody if you're going to have a difficult I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that. It's a professional environment. Hopefully people can be professional, but if you have to end up having a conversation about one of those kind of topics, get counseling first, coaching, to have that conversation. To writing clear policies and stuff around like, you know, you can say in your policy, don't hang political posters and religious ornate stuff at your desk. Like, you can kind of paint for them like the expectations in your policy. And then also, I think it's just that, everybody, you can't judge a book by its cover. Right. So just because someone shows up to an interview with a cross doesn't mean they're going to have an issue if you're not religious or, you just can't make assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. All right, guys. Well, hope you guys found this somewhat entertaining and educational. And we'll come back next week with another episode. We're still figuring out what we're going to talk about, but we'll do that.
We had to have our preliminary pre-meeting to figure
Yeah,
out
yeah,
the
yeah.
subject, but yeah.
So if you guys do have stories you want to submit, you can find the link below and submit your stories, and then we'll talk about it in a future episode. All right.
Yep.
Bye, Ashley.
Good. Thanks. Bye, Yang.
Thanks.